I'm very honored to present our keynote speaker of today. Before I do that, I would like to point out to the papers on the desks that you can find. Gabriella has kindly asked to fill it out. Don't put your name on it, just fill it out and then fold it in two, and we will do something with it. So it's my pleasure to introduce Gabriella Parente. She's not just a seasoned leadership, HR, and DEI expert, but she's also a beacon of resilience and empowerment. With accolades as a two-time author with McGraw-Hill and a seven-time LinkedIn learning instructor, also an award-winning consultant, Gabriella has forged a path of impact across the globe, touching the lives of touching the lives of nearly 1 million individuals through transformative training and coaching programs. At the heart of her mission lies a dedication for nurturing the resilience and self-care practices of healthcare professionals, recognizing their indispensable role in society's well-being. Her work resonates deeply with esteemed organizations such as Google, Capital One, Microsoft, VMware, and Meredith Corporation, where she imparts wisdom gleaned from over 20 years of business experience. She combines degrees in psychology and graduate degrees in business to uniquely understand what truly motivates to people in successful workplaces and teams. Multiple certifications, like a certified Gallup Clifton Strengths Coach, executive coach professional in human resources, excel her to the top of her field to design, develop the world's most high-performing organizations, teams, and leaders. So in the speech she will give now, which is titled Strength in Adversity, Empowering Healthcare Professionals Through Resilience and Self-Care, Gabriella will weave her expertise into a narrative of hope and empowerment. Through her words, perfusionists will find not just solace, but actionable strategies to navigate the challenges they face with resilience and grace. Please help me welcome Gabriella to the stage with a round of applause. So just fill out, for those who have just come in, fill out the forms and just put them in, fold them in two. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here after lunch. It was an otherwise Tuesday morning, a normal Tuesday morning. I was grocery shopping with my daughter, and she was a baby at the time. And we were walking through Walmart, actually, and going to get our regular items. And she was a baby, and she was in the front of the cart, you know, the little baby holder in the front. And we're walking through, and we stopped at the pharmacy. And there was this gentleman in front of me. He was a big guy, at least 6'2", 300 pounds, big guy. All of a sudden, right in front of me, he falls to the ground. And everyone starts panicking, people are screaming, no one knows what to do. And I kept thinking to myself, oh my gosh, this person needs CPR, and they need it right away. But I'm not qualified. I'm not a doctor, nurse. The last time I had taken CPR classes, I was in high school to be a lifeguard. So I'm from the outside corporate world. So just so you know, I don't have the background that you have. I remember thinking to myself, we only have a few minutes. I know he needs compressions. I know this needs to start. But I started instantly panicking, thinking, well, why isn't anyone else doing it? Why isn't a Walmart employee doing it? Why isn't there a defibrillator here? Then I started thinking to myself, well, I'm probably not strong enough to give him CPR. He was a lot bigger than me. I heard you needed to be strong, so I got nervous about that. I also thought to myself, I probably don't even remember. The rules have probably changed since I was in high school. This was 20 years, right? 20 years have gone by. So all those things went through my head. I second-guessed myself. Those minutes, they kept going. No one of the Walmart employees did anything. People surrounded him in a circle, though, and almost protected him from anyone coming in doing CPR, which I thought was interesting and odd. And as a HR leader, I thought, why isn't anyone trained to do this? But those long minutes where I sat there and I panicked and I froze. I didn't do anything. Those minutes, they kept going, and finally the EMT arrived and the firefighters arrived, and the guy ran in and he got right down on his knees and started giving him CPR. And so I felt relief that someone was finally there, but I also felt horrible, like I got punched in the stomach. Like I knew that's what needed to happen 10 minutes ago, and now this person's life is on the line. So if you are like me at all, you may have experienced life and death in the OR, or maybe in your own personal life as well, not just in the OR. You may have felt those uncomfortable feelings like I felt that day, seeing a life leave right before you, and that feeling of you wish you could have done something different, right? It's a horrible feeling. Not sure if any of you have experienced that, but after being at your conference for the past 2 days, I have, I thought I was going to be a bummer talking about, death. That's all we talk about. So I do know that you're quite familiar with this. You know what it's like to have a life end and to wish you could have done something different, or to second guess yourself and second guess the people around you, right? And that feeling brought out anger in me because I wanted somebody superior than me to do something in that situation. But it also kept me from doing anything as well. So maybe you felt like that. Maybe you felt like it was your fault that you lost a patient at some point. I'm not sure if anyone's felt that way. Or it's your colleague's fault or your superior's fault. But the problem is this constant exposure to trauma, day in and day out, is really taxing on you. We need to be able to deal with the humanness in that, right? You go to work every day and you see life and death, and you're in very, very stressful situations all day long. And so how do we still remain a human where we have empathy and feelings about what happened? We also need to be able to bounce back from that and also not let that event ruin our confidence going forward. And we also need to make sure we've learned, and then we speak up the next time too. So if I could go back, I would have spoke up, right? I would have said something differently than what I did say, which was nothing. The answer is complicated and simple at the same time. It's called building resilience. It's building yourself back up after adversity so you can get back on the field, get back in the OR, and do the things that you love the most and what matters most, and that's helping to save lives. So seeing life and death all day long at this point, maybe you're used to it. I'm not real sure. But I do know that day in and day out, month after month, year after year, this can lead to PTSD, it can lead to mental conditions, and it can lead to just plain crazy, right? Look to the left and the right of you real quick, and you'll see examples of crazy. It's not you, it's the people around you. We also are in Florida too, so you might see a little bit extra. Just kidding, I used to live in Florida, but I got out quick. Okay, so you've all probably heard the word grit and resilience, right? Grit is a word that we've heard about a lot in the media. Has anyone heard of it lately? A little, maybe too much. So words that describe grit are like mental toughness, fierceness, hardiness, hard work. I've also heard a few things from you all. I did take some time to sit with you all and have conference calls with some of you, so thank you so much for doing that for me before this event, so I could learn a little bit about what you do day in and day out, right? Some things that I heard you've been told were just grin and bear it, don't take it home with you, suck it up, you get paid to do this, and protect your spouse from this and don't bring it home with you. Do any of those sound familiar? Have you heard those or thought those things before? Any other good ones I should add to the list? Have been told of anything else? Anyone? Did I cover the bases there? I believe that those words have actually done you a disservice. And maybe they were well-meaning at the time, but to take out your humanness, to take out your feelings, your compassion, your empathy in a situation, and just throw it to the side and not have feelings about what just happened is basically like say the same thing like, oh, I'm just going to put my heart or my lungs to the side. I don't need that right now. But that's not how the human body works. We need our compassion, we need our empathy, we need all of it. So it really goes smack in the face of what you actually do need to do to heal from trauma. And yes, you do experience trauma when you go to work. You are in, it's life and death, fight or flight all day long. You also need help. And today we're going to do that for you. NIH states that first responders, similar to yourselves, are more prone to experiencing feelings of vulnerability given their high exposure to stressful events, as well as using maladaptive coping strategies such as avoidance. Since psychological distress is still rarely discussed openly in these fields, I don't think this is something that is talked about a lot. Was that right? Give me a nod or if you think that's, yeah. That's what I've been hearing from everybody. It's not really talked about. So what if I told you, what if I asked you to think of a patient that you had that was maybe a special patient of yours that you lost in your career? Maybe it was the first time you were in the OR. I've heard some stories this week from you all, but I bet you could tell me their name, right? You probably remember their name. All of you who I spoke to also stated that you have a strong desire to help that patient, to help any patient that's in your OR, as evidenced from all the information that we're hearing this week. But who helps the helper? We need to start looking at self-care from a different lens. You need to start looking at self-care on the same level as patient care. Like I said, I've heard over and over again the amount of time and effort and mental energy you spend on making sure that your patients are properly cared for. So we can devote some of that care into ourselves. It's not taking away from any patient care, but this is in addition to, okay? You know, similarly, this holds true for parents, right? Are any of you parents? Show of hands. Yeah, wow, a lot of you are, okay. Anyone have little kids right now, little ones? Yeah, okay, yeah, me too. I have a 5-year-old boy, and that's a whole other world of craziness that I had no idea. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, where are you peeing right now? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand this. I have a daughter to compare that to, and completely different. But has anyone ever snapped at their kid after a long day of them just like whining and crying and just not listening? Has that ever happened? Yeah, same. You love them so much, but they just drive you bonkers. But what if there's a way that we can recharge ourselves amid that chaos? If we give to ourselves first in a healthy way, could we find a little bit more to give to somebody else? Maybe you could take braver steps in the OR then and possibly taking the risk to meet the patient's family rather than detaching yourself from them to protect yourself. So why would we focus on resilience today? Because there's something called post-traumatic growth. And I don't know if anyone has ever heard of post-traumatic growth. Show of hands, anyone heard of post-traumatic growth? No? Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about what that is. So psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, they observed that people can actually thrive after traumatic events rather than have the PTSD that we all know of, right? So there's PTG, which is post-traumatic growth, opposite of PTSD. And they saw that some people just really thrived and they actually became better because of the incident of trauma or adversity. And so they really wanted to study this and why some people did and why some people didn't. So they found through their research that, this is from the National Institute of Health, that 52% of people who experience an adversity or a traumatic event go through what is called post-traumatic growth, meaning a person ends up thriving because of that hardship. Okay, they found 2 traits to be more likely to experience PTG, and those traits are openness to experience and extroversion. That's because people who are more open are more likely to reconsider their belief systems, and then extroverts are just more active in response to trauma and seek out connections with others. Now, doesn't mean introverts can't have this, okay? You only need to connect with one person. It doesn't have to be 20 people, okay? Also, I do want to point out, as we talk about post-traumatic growth, you really want to be cautious not to jump into this right away. If you are a leader or a manager, as some of you might be, because if you start saying, "Hey, look, you can grow from this, you can get better," if you say that right after the thing happens, they're gonna probably smack you. Okay, it really takes away and minimizes their suffering and their loss during that time. So you got to give it a minute, okay? And then if you think it's been enough minutes, then you can kind of help and guide them through some of these processes. And this is not just limited to stuff that happens in the OR. Some of you have faced very traumatic incidents in your own life, and then you're also going to work on top of it and experiencing that day in and day out as well. Okay. Okay, so Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, they said, okay, we figured out that 5 main positive results can come out, and they look for these to see if you're going to be in that category that experiences post-traumatic growth, or if you're going to be in the other category that sadly a lot of us get into, and having those PTSD symptoms or some negative coping patterns. And we'll talk about what those are in just a minute here. So what are the 5 things? And these are 5 things that you can do today that actually really can help you. That's what I love about this, is that if you start implementing some of these things, you can be in that category too. So you don't have to keep getting bogged down by more stress, more stress, more stress, and then you lead into those negative coping patterns, right? Okay, so cute, happy little couple here. It has meaning here. So feelings of new possibilities in one's life. So for any of you who are probably cerebral thinkers, I would imagine, what did you learn from it? The learning gives meaning to the incident, right? And if you learn something that you weren't gonna know any other way, that's very, very powerful, and that transfers to new possibilities going forward. So that's one way that you can help get yourself to that post-traumatic growth, okay? So new possibilities for one's life. Maybe you learned, hey, that's not what I want to do with my life. Maybe I need to act differently in the OR. Maybe I need to have better relationships. Like, what did you learn out of it? And you can take that with you, and that can really guide you. Okay, improved relationships, where the cute little couple comes from. So as we all just went through COVID together, a lot of people told me that they bonded with people they didn't otherwise think they would bond with, because it was such a traumatic event for everybody. Maybe they bonded with their spouse. Maybe they got a divorce during that time. Could have gone either way. But a lot of people tell me that through hardship, you actually can find a better relationship. But I don't mean partner relationships all the time. Sisters, brothers, mothers, daughters, all those different types of relationships. I recently did a speech, and this woman came up to me and she said, well, my husband and I both lost our jobs on the same exact day. We work for the same company, and they laid us both off, and no severance, and they had 3 kids. So obviously they were pretty stressed, but what they chose to do was work together rather than wallow in that kind of grief of, why did this happen to me? Those sort of things. So they actually became, she says, their marriage became so much stronger because of that incident. So really bad incident, but yet they were able to have an improved relationship out of it. Okay, third one, show of personal strength. Okay, so this is, obviously self-explanatory. So, you now have more, you're stronger, you're better, you're faster, smarter because of the incident that happened. Okay. And then a spiritual change. This could be any sort of spiritual change, religious change. You could all of a sudden believe in God, not believe in God, but maybe become spiritual with the universe. It's whatever works for you, and there's no definition that you have to stay in with that. It could just be a new appreciation for the world and the universe that we have. Psychologists will look for that as the 4th step here to see if you're going to have that post-traumatic growth. Okay. And then the fifth one is the greater appreciation for life. Okay, and maybe you experience this in your roles. Maybe you see someone that reminds you of yourself or your child or your parents or your spouse in that OR, and you say, I'm so glad that I get to go home to mine. That is really, really powerful. It can happen in different ways too. I recently read an article about a gentleman who was a CEO of a nonprofit, and he had 2 sexual harassment claims against him. Both were legitimate. And so he wasn't doing very well in his career and his life and his marriage, right? And during that time of the allegations and all the legal ramifications, him and his wife actually got into a horrific car accident. They both made it from the car accident, but he credits the car accident for actually changing his life, because he said, the car accident made me realize that I was already trying to end my life before the accident took place by having affairs and doing whatever he did. I was going to lose my family. I was going to lose my kids. I was going to lose my career. And so the accident just woke him up, and his behavior did change, and he had a greater appreciation for his life after the car accident. Okay, so it's been suggested that PTG may decrease feelings of distress following exposure to trauma, but there's a few things that can impede it, such as impede the development of growth, and that could be your attachment style, avoidant particularly. Okay, and again, don't move into PTG right after someone's gone through adversity, right? Give it a minute, give it a beat, give it a few weeks, whatever you need to do there. Okay. So I had this whole section on self-care today, and then I started talking to you, then I started interviewing you, and realized that there's really nobody else more qualified to speak about diet and nutrition and taking care of your heart and your lungs than you all. So I said, I'm not going to do that today. We're not going to go there. You could actually teach me a few things. I've actually learned a lot already being at your conference. So, but why aren't you taking care of yourself better is more the question that I have. Because when I did interview you, quite a few of you, it didn't seem like you are taking care of yourself. Now, why is that? So then I began researching, well, why is that the case? You know, knowing and doing are 2 different things, right? We all probably know we shouldn't eat the 3rd or 4th cookie, or we shouldn't, eat the entire sleeve of Thin Mint cookies, but we do. So why do we do that when we know better? Well, time, energy, guilt. I've heard a lot of that from you. That you have guilt in taking care of yourself. Maybe it's a rite of passage. Maybe someone told you along the line, this is something you just have to deal with, right? So the real reason you don't take better care of yourself is just lack of self-compassion, because you don't either think you need it or you aren't worthy of it, because that's reserved for your patients. They're the ones who deserve compassion and care, right? They're the ones who are on the operating table, not you. You're good. You have your family. You get to go home to them. You're healthy. All those things. Also, what comes into play with self-compassion is the way that we talk to ourselves. So let's say that you had a surgery that didn't go well, and maybe you thought it was your fault, or you could have done something more, or you could have changed the way that you reacted in there. So what do you say to yourself after a really, really bad day? Anyone want to share? I have some ideas, but did I see a hand? Done the best I could. Good. Yeah. Yes. You don't say anything. Mm-hmm. Just grin and bear it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And again, that takes our humanness and says, keep it all inside into this little bucket that's not really supposed to go anyways. It's supposed to be let out. And so what do you think that does to your body over time? Did you have one? What was that? Anger? Mm-hmm. Yep. Increases stress. Yep. What do you say to yourself, though? Do you have internal dialogue? Do you say something like, gosh, I screwed it up. You idiot. You knew better. Yeah? Those exact words, huh? Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of us do that. A lot of us say that after we've made a mistake. We're very hard on ourselves. Or do you say something like, well, I didn't perform my best today, but I am human and none of us are perfect, and I'm allowed to not be perfect every single day. So a little bit of a change there, a little bit more self-compassionate, more validating to what you just went through, okay? The National Institute of Health states that self-compassionate individuals have better psychological health, motivation, perspective taking, better relationships, and happiness. They also experience less rumination, anxiety, depression, shame, and fear of failure. Okay? So self-compassion is really an altruistic act that prepares us to cope with life stressors, being in the OR every day. It's also about comforting, soothing, and respecting and validating. So if you're just able to talk to yourself differently, if that's all you got out of this today, is that your internal dialogue was different, you could actually experience less anxiety, less depression, less rumination, shame, and fear of failure. And Richard, who talked earlier today, which was fantastic, about cognitive bias errors. I mean, do you think that's going to cause a bias error when you talk to yourself like that? Pretty likely, pretty likely. So when we are self-compassionate with ourselves, when we choose to do that for our own selves, it really protects us. It protects ourselves, it protects others, and it also motivates ourselves to act with kindness and support to the world. So again, going back to, if you take care of yourself first, you can have a little bit more to give somebody else in that operating room with that patient that you all told me so highly how much you care about if they make it or not, or if they're okay after the surgery. I know that's important to you. Self-criticism, that actually triggers stress. Which is the opposite of self-compassion, which calms us down. That releases hormones like oxytocin and endorphins, and that reduces stress and increases feelings of safety. So something's just as simple as how we take care of ourselves, or how we talk to ourselves. Okay. So we talked about negative coping skills and positive coping skills. So just a little bit about that. I think all of us at one point or another have experienced or done one of the negative coping skills. Not sure how often we do the positive coping skills. So that could be, there's a million of these, but it could be journaling, doing puzzles, breathing techniques, breath work, practicing progressive muscle relaxation. If you don't know what that is, you kind of tighten muscles from head to toe. You tighten as much as you can, like your face, your eyes start up here, and tighten as hard as you can, and then you release it, and then you go down the body like that. I do that before I go to bed sometimes. Or engaging your 5 senses. So that's commonly called mindfulness. So when you wake up in the morning or you're out of a surgery, it's slowing down the brain. And I think all of you are probably pretty darn smart in this room. And so your brain is probably highly active. So looking at just like, what do I see right now? What colors do I see? What am I smelling? Just calm your brain to what am I sensing right now, and go through all 5 senses. That is a really, really powerful relaxation technique. So again, the negative coping skills, I get it, right? Like you're tired, you've been at work all day, you've been on your feet. Maybe you had a difficult surgery, maybe the patient didn't make it, and you have an hour commute, and then you go home and you've got kids and a spouse who all need you too, and maybe that same kiddo is acting up, right? Or maybe it's your in-laws, or your neighbor who's annoying or something, right? And what do you want to do at that point when you get home? Scream, right? Been there. Scream, right? typically, people will say like, "Oh, I want to have a glass of wine," right? I'm gonna chill out that way. And there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine. I'm not saying that. These negative coping skills, this really comes into play when this impacts your life. So, wine, sex, eating, shopping, you have to do those things. But when it starts interfering with your daily life, that's when you know that the behavior has become a negative coping skill. And that's what you're doing to cope, right? Because it was hard and it doesn't feel good, but someone along the way told you not to talk about it, or told you you were stupid for doing what you did, or put you down in the OR, or your manager did, or your teammate did. And that doesn't feel good. And we don't have the resources to know I can actually choose something positive for myself. We go to these, we go to the negative because it's easy. Okay, so many of you were here earlier and you filled out the sheet. Did everyone get a chance to fill out that sheet already? Show of hands, who's filled it out already? Okay, sweet. If you haven't yet, there is papers laying all around. Please grab one if you haven't done it yet, and then go ahead and fold it up. If you wrote your name on it, please just cross it off. Did anyone write their name? No one. Okay, everyone listened. Sweet. Usually that doesn't happen. Someone does. Someone writes their name on it. Just go ahead and cross your name off and fold it up. And I want you to get up. I know that it's after lunch and you're tired, so I got the short stick on what time I have to do my speech, but get up. I want you to hand that paper to somebody, but then I want that person to hand it to 5 other people. So I don't want to see your paper again. You don't want to see your paper again. Make it go through 5 people. Okay, you're going to get up, walk around. And if you get yours back, recycle it, please. Okay, did everyone pass it around at least 5 times? Did anyone get it back? No? Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is you're going to get a little bit more exercise. Before you have somebody else's list, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to read each one aloud, and if your paper has a check mark next to it, you're going to stand up. Okay? That's all you have to do. And then you sit back down. And then I'm going to go through the next one. Okay? Sound easy enough? Okay. Trust me, your legs get a little tired going up and down all day. All right. First one, I have lost a loved one. Wow. Okay, thank you. I've experienced difficulties with my job. Thank you. I have been worried about what people think of me. Thank you. I have doubted my abilities and my qualifications. Okay, thank you. I have felt lonely. Thank you. I have experienced periods of depression in my life. Thank you all for being brave. I'm very critical of myself. Wow. Thank you. I find it hard to discuss my feelings and my grief from events that happen in the OR. Thank you. I feel like I'm navigating challenges on my own with no support. Thank you. I have felt that it was my fault that we lost a patient. Wow, that's heavy. I have had to tell a patient's family that they did not make it. Thank you. I have experienced some PTSD symptoms as a result of my work as a perfusionist or a healthcare professional. That's a lot, thank you. I have difficult family relationships. I'll stand up to that one. Thank you. I've been betrayed about somebody that I care about, by someone that I care about. Thank you. I have been judgmental. Thank you. I have betrayed somebody that I care about. Brave, thank you. I have felt rejected. Thank you. I know somebody who was a colleague who's taken their own life. Wow, thank you. I find it hard to make meaningful relationships with people at work. Okay, thank you. I experience joy most days. Great, not all of you, but good. I feel burnt out. Thank you. I am uncertain about my future. Thank you. I have felt a strong desire to save a patient, but in the end, I just couldn't save the person. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty there. I have felt that I have experienced bad leadership in my work as a perfusionist or a healthcare professional. Quite a few. And I find purpose or value as a perfusionist. That's awesome. Thank you, almost everybody. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. You know, you stood up for somebody else. You don't know who you stood up for, but perhaps you checked that same box as well. Know that you are not alone. Talk to your peers, talk to your partner, talk to your father, your mother, your aunt, your uncle, your best friend. Okay? They want to listen. Don't stay silent. Staying silent is probably one of the most harmful things you can do to yourselves. The number one indicator if a person is going to be resilient is actually the quality of their close personal relationships. So not the quantity. Don't worry, introverts. You just need one, okay? One or two. You don't need to face your challenges alone. Okay, you have many resources available to you. I know this because I know what's hanging up in your hospitals and I see all the different resources that you have available to you. And again, no one else is more knowledgeable about how to take care of the human body than you are. There's a lot of ideals out there that tell you that you need to face your darkness alone. For some reason, it's in our media, it's cultural as well. But when you start utilizing the power of relationships and community, this is where you get to tap into your resilience. This is where it's at. Sometimes we have to borrow the strength and belief that others have in us when we don't have it for ourselves. Okay. Clients often share with me that they feel like it's hard to find people to connect with and to create deep connections. But when they open their eyes to the truth, they realize that it's actually much easier to create close personal relationships than they made it out to be. and they're so excited to soak in the value of new close relationships. I want you to know today that, first of all, you're amazing. Thank you for your work. You are not broken. You are not alone. Please use the resources you have in front of you. Connect with people. They want to connect back. They really do. They want to hear about the day. Keep doing what you're doing. Others think you're amazing too. Do you know anybody who would benefit from hearing this message today? If so, I'd love to talk to you outside after this presentation. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Gabriella, for a really wonderful presentation. I can see that the chat has a lot of comments, mostly agreeing and telling personal stories or experiences, and some disagreeing. So we will try to see if we can find a common ground. Are there any people who want to share or ask a question to Gabriella for the moment?
I just think some of my answers to those questions was sometimes. Like there was a question about being critical about yourself. Sometimes I am.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean it's a habit. So I don't know if that makes a difference.
No, it does. And that's what the question's asking. Do you ever feel critical of yourself? Sometimes that matters. You know, it doesn't have to be every single day, every single time, right?
And my usual reaction when I am faced with adversity in the operating room is, how could I have done it better? You know, what can I do to learn from this incident so it never happens again?
That's right.
So I mean, it's a way of being hard on myself, but that's my way. I'm sure a lot of other people do it differently.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful way, like I mentioned, and that's one of the aspects of that post-traumatic growth is, did you find meaning from it? Do you change the way you do things now in a positive way that it's positive for the rest of the world too? So thank you for sharing that. Excuse me. Any other questions or thoughts?
So knowing this was coming up, I had a conversation with my colleagues who work in pediatrics, and we all say that actually you grow, you change over time, and especially when you've had children, the job is harder, and that's when you really struggle. I know all of us have found that if you were going to sort of chart how we deal with different things, the best word I've heard described is that we become numb. And it's the point where we don't feel anything at all. And I think that's probably almost a more dangerous place to be than otherwise.
Yes.
And I think that's
and
one of the things
you mentioned that too back there. You said, you know, I don't say anything, you know, and so you all obviously are very well informed and educated on, you know, various functions of the body, right? You know exactly how it works, how to keep it alive. But to keep quiet is taking this part of our brain and just numbing it. And a lot of times we do the negative coping skills at that point. We just numb it because it's too difficult. But you have to pay attention to it because it's just much of a part of you as your legs, your arms, your heart, your lungs.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Great talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have been a supervisor for about 35 years. And I'll tell you, in these traumatic incidents, I am not an expert. And I'll tell you, I'm afraid to say the wrong word, but most of our employers, they do have a program within the hospital, employee assisted program. When we refer our employees to them, then our employees become protected from, you know, being let go or for a reason they harm a patient or something. That's where the difficulties become. What are you supposed to do with them within limitations? My concerns is that patient who is lying on the table. That's the one my first concern about.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're just afraid that, you know, something is going to happen. And that's why we try to prevent this by calling EAP and see if they can assist in this situation.
Well, the EAP should be completely anonymous. Should be. You know, I've worked for companies where, as the HR director, I don't even have access to people who've used the EAP. However, if you're a leader and you referred somebody, obviously you might know that there's an issue going on, right? We can talk about that more offline too, if you want. That's a specific kind of leadership challenge. I would say don't let it prevent you or them from getting the help that they need. Heck, maybe it's not the right job for them. Maybe they can't do it. Maybe they need more support, and maybe they'll come back better and stronger. But as an employer, you do have to weigh those risks all the time, and patient safety does come first. But like I said, if you could try to look at it as the same level of patient care. Because when someone's intimidated or someone feels scared or having PTSD symptoms, they're going to have those cognitive bias errors a lot more likely. So you don't want that person being like that in your OR, right? Like you have to get that fixed somehow, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I will say that I have experienced, when someone has been referred to the EAB program, their privacy has not been protected by HR. And I thought that was a problem.
That is a huge problem.
Yes.
That's a massive problem. We could talk about that offline. That's a leadership and problem. Big time. One more? Okay.
Hi, thank you for a great talk.
Thank you.
Are the positive coping skills better practiced as an individual, or can they be practiced as a group? And are there benefits or disadvantages to doing that?
Yeah, great question. I didn't even plant that question. That was really good. I do a lot of team building stuff, a lot of team building work too. And I think if you can at all, if you're a leader, get them out, like get them to do something fun together, to like do another activity that's perfect, or even better yet, start learning about them. So specifically, like I do what we call strength finders. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that before. It's an assessment, but it basically tells you what you're naturally gifted at, and that's how you're going to probably act in the OR, but you have to realize what the other person has too. So understanding those differences is going to help you out in a team manner. So to answer your question, both are really great. A lot of this starts with yourself. But if you are an extrovert and you need that like interaction with people, and you have the ability to get people together, like and try to get your company to bring people in to do that, like, yes, absolutely. Like, I understand that. I'm an extrovert and I need to be with people. Like, that's just how I'm built, So it really depends on who you are too. Yeah. I'm sorry? Yep, exactly. Strength finders is just like, it's very similar to DISC and those. That's like the next step of like evolution of team building. So you can have fun together, but then there's like, okay, let's learn about each other and our differences so we can have common language instead of negative language about, I don't like the way you did that. You did this, right? It's like strategic, some, things that you're naturally gifted at and that you had before you turned 5 years old. So they're very innate to you. I know that was my last question, sorry. You can connect with me here. Feedback, if you do know somebody who could benefit from hearing this message, you can connect with me there and put your email address in too. Thank you so much.